in studio, our good friend and brother, Dr. Marc Lamont Hill. You see him everywhere, CNN, MSNBC, great commentator of all things Americana these days. Good morning, my brother. How you doing?
Morning, brother. Good to see you, man.
Yeah. You know, I don't know if you all know, but Marc is a great public speaker as well. He's actually, we didn't call it a sermon, but, you know, he ended up preaching at Mother Bethel once and at Macedonia.
Man, you know, I'm always excited when you invite me out. I ain't never been invited no place twice.
Right.
And, you know, having the chance to talk to the people is always a pleasure, man.
Yeah.
I take great pride and joy in the opportunity, man. I'm humbled, man, that you still call me.
Yeah,
even though I say crazy stuff.
Well, you know what actually brought you came to my attention when I was teaching at a seminary. Oh man, over 10 years ago, you wrote an article on I bling because I'm happy.
Oh,
it was a critique on prosperity gospel preachers.
Yes.
And comparing them to hip hop artists.
Yeah, I forgot about that. But yeah, man, that was that. I got some interesting feedback from that. Some people liked it. A whole bunch of folk wasn't speaking to me.
Yeah, I'm sure you got some hate mail.
Oh,
you and Eddie Glaude together. He talking about the black church is dead. You talking about I bling because I'm happy.
Eddie took it to the next level,
right.
Man. But you know, Eddie's built a lot stronger than me on that stuff, man. So he was able to really fight back.
Yeah.
But it was one of the first moments. It was when I really started writing for a public audience, and I really got to appreciate what it meant to offer critique in public.
Yeah.
And to see the kind of feedback you get. Used to getting good feedback.
Right.
You know, up at that point, I was writing music reviews, and you know, people might not agree with my assessment of an album, but they wasn't sending no death threats.
Right. No, don't talk about the pastor.
Right. That's a whole other level.
But it also depends on what album you're reviewing. You know,
that's true. Because if I critique the Beyonce album, it'd be some problems.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you'd have my daughters chasing you.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, you don't want a 14 and 13. They in the beehive, bro.
Right.
No
Deep,
one
hard.
is ready for that, because I made a mistake once of writing a critique of Beyonce, and there are people out there who still aren't speaking to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but wait a minute, she's a singer and not even a very good one.
Whoa,
but,
see?
you know?
The words of Denise Clay represent her and her only. Not Mark Tyler, not Marc Lamont Hill, not WURD.
That's exactly right. Thank you for clearing that up. Hey, so listen, you're coming back to Temple.
Yeah, I'm back, man. It's been great.
Yeah, so you be teaching in the spring?
Yeah, I'm teaching there right now, actually. So what happened was last year in spring of 17, I decided to come back home. I wanted to be closer, and I wanted to do some stuff in our community.
Right.
And so I decided to teach at Temple, and they offered me an endowed professorship. They offered me the Steve Charles Chair in Media, Cities, and Solutions, which was a really interesting opportunity to connect my work in media, my work as an anthropologist, and my work as an activist in ways that were exciting to me. Like, yo, you can actually do this work and make some concrete change on the ground.
Right. Well, you know, so it's interesting. So Flood the drummer's on as well. So Flood's an independent journalist / activist, and we were talking this week. Somebody called in. Chris, do you remember the name of the guy from the 1800s?
Thomas Fortune.
Thomas Fortune, thanks. And I hadn't heard the name before, but when we looked it up, it described him as journalist and an activist. Yeah. And that there's, you know, Chris gets it all the time, people, you know, pushing on him saying you have to either be a journalist or an activist. But, you know, I mean, I saw you, we were together in Ferguson, I was coming in as you were going out.
Yeah,
So you were out on the streets in demonstrations, and yet at the same time, then we look on CNN and you're giving commentary. Can you talk about that tension between journalism and activism?
Well, I think there's different modes of journalism. You know, I think there are traditions of journalism. If I'm writing for the AP, you know, my job might not be to say, and Trump was tripping when he told that soldiers why, you know, that might not be my job. You know, if I'm anchoring CNN at 8 o'clock, that might not be my job. Although I think it maybe should be. Both the job should be mine and that thing should be mine.
Right.
I was just joking, Anderson. But also I think there's always been a tradition of activist journalism. There's always been a tradition. I mean, look at Ida B. Wells.
Right.
You know, there have always been people who said, I don't have the luxury of just standing by observing the world. Same thing as academics. Some of us say we're supposed to be objective and just report data, and other people are saying, nah, we have a responsibility to make the word flesh, to do something actionable in our lives. And I think that I happen to come out of that tradition. I think the difference now is in the last 20 years, we've seen more, particularly in TV, we've seen more outlets where people are reporting news and commenting on the news. Fox News was where I worked for a while, was one of the big places that did that. You had the straight news people like Bret Baier or Shepard Smith at 6 or 7, but then you got to 8 o'clock and you have Bill O'Reilly. You had Sean Hannity at 9 o'clock. At CNN, CNN, where I'm at now, we have a different approach, but it's still a similar logic that there are times where people can offer opinion, times where they don't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's important in this time too, right? I mean, so because when you have a president who literally has, and it's not just the president, as we were talking even locally, when people get news they don't like, it's easy now to write it off as fake.
Right.
And again, we've witnessed that again here locally with folk who are, even black folk. So it's a bad story. I don't agree with it. The media is just coming to get me. We need more than, we do need your commentary, right? And insight.
Absolutely. And it's a great out now because there is fake news and because there's so much news that is opinionated and driven by an agenda. When you do something crazy, you can just be like, oh, they out to get me, right? Because there's an out. There's a different kind of out. But we do need opinion. We do need perspective. We do need people to comment on the world. And I think the piece that we often miss, and I always talk to my students about this, is that even when the journalist or the anchor specifically is quote unquote objective, they still have a point of view. They still have a worldview. And that worldview may not come out in your news read. I may not say Trump was tripping, or I may not say I hate Africans. But when I select the stories that we're going to, in our rundown to cover, if I never cover Africa, and I never report the ways that Trump is tripping, I'm still implicitly supporting a particular agenda.
Yeah.
So, when I worked at Huffington Post, for example, it was important for me to cover Chicago every Monday and the people who were dying over the weekend. We didn't do it. We didn't have anything negative to say about Chicago, but when we weren't covering it, that told a story too.
Right.
When we cover a bombing in France, we don't cover the one in Lebanon. That tells a story too.
Yeah.
So there is no objective position in journalism. We're always telling the story.
Yeah. I mean,
can I push back on that just a little bit?
Please.
I think that while it is great that there are outlets where people can say what they think and what they believe, what I would like to see is more informed opinion, because what I see as somebody who's been an objective journalist most of her career, I see a lot of people talking out of spaces that they shouldn't be talking out of because they're not necessarily designed for conversation. Because you have a lot of people who,
like, what kind of spaces are you thinking about? I'm not asking you to name names. Just say what kind of spaces.
But no, what I'm saying is people talking. There's not enough research. There's not enough people actually taking the time to go out and report. Whenever I write a column that is my opinion, I do not give my opinion based just purely on my gut. I go out and I talk to people and I do research, and there's not enough of that.
I agree.
And because there's not enough of that, you got people talking out of their necks and whatnot, and it's not making any sense, and it's not informing the public. And because the public is going uninformed, we have the guy who tore up Atlantic City as president of the United States. And that bugs me.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that's a function of I agree with you. Everything you said, I agree. There's a lot of people who don't have informed opinions and who, I'm not sure that's a function of opinion becoming more central to the conversation. I think that's just a function of bad journalism, because you could be an objective journalist and not fact check. You could be an objective journalist, and I'm using objective in quotes. I don't think there is such a thing, but you can be the kind of straight news person and still not fact check, still not do your research, still not make sure you talk to the proper sources. You could still be sloppy, even without offering your opinion. I think part of the problem is, to your point, I think because there's 24-hour cable news, because there's blogs, because there's all these things, it's hard for people to tell journalism from opinion. It's hard for people to distinguish a anchor from a commentator or a host, so that when you watch Fox News, you may not be able to tell the difference between Bret Baier and Sean Hannity.
And you think Bill O'Reilly was actually giving news?
Was a news anchor, right?
Versus kind of like what I'm doing.
Doing what we're doing, right? Talking about the news.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big problem of it. But I agree. I would love to see people more informed. One of the things we're trying to do, and one of the things I'm doing at Temple, is starting we're focusing on solutions journalism, but also really pushing on the citizen journalism mode that was really popular maybe 5-10 years ago. We want to train people in the city to be able to kind of report on their own identities, report on their own stories, report on their own interests, but in ways that are responsible and rigorous. You can't just get a camera and record stuff. You can't just tell a story. You can't just say what you think and call it journalism. And so we want to teach people how to do it. And I think that's our job as teachers of journalism. And Denise is a brilliant teacher of journalism, and has been for some time. I think it's our job to teach people how to do it.
Yeah, so I know Flood is listening. He's talking about citizen journalist. That's kind of how he emerged. So, Flood, I don't know if you want to weigh in on this.
No, I'm just really happy to hear Dr. Hill say that. I think that's where the power is, and kind of, taking the power back from the mainstream media a little bit and putting it in the hands of the people. I happen to think that, the community members who experience injustice are the true experts. I think they're the subject matter experts who are far too often ignored, and their commentary is hushed and muted in favor of personalities, because that's where our media is now. It's personality driven. It's soundbite driven. It's not about context. It's not about historical perspective. It's not about advocacy. And so, putting the power back in the hands of the people who live closest to the problems and allowing them to inform the larger media ecosystem, I think is the best for the business.
Yeah, well, and listen, and I think that this is why places like WURD, the Philadelphia Tribune, Philadelphia Sunday Sun, and other outlets of our own are so important to be able to have these kind of conversations. So I won't call the name of the station out, but just this morning got up to kind of see, all the stories that people are going to be running. It's like 4 a.m. and literally, so 10 crime stories in a row.
Yep.
Black faces hanging as the story is told. So here's the mug shot. It's just hanging there the entire time. The one story with the one white person, they show his face for a second, and then they show all these buildings associated with where he's supposed to have done this crime. And then they kind of show his face again for a second. But every black person, so it's almost like white people did nothing yesterday.
Right.
And seriously, it's kind of like, wow, man, you need to move to the white side of town because they don't commit crime.
Right.
Because like these Negroes is like off the hook.
Right. And that's my point. It's and let's say every black person in that rundown did a crime.
Right. Okay.
Which
right.
is
but it's 1.5 million people in the city, so
exactly.
it's possible that 10 people did crime.
Right. But the stories we choose to tell.
Yes. That's
just as important as how we tell the story.
Right.
There are schools in Philadelphia that don't have clean drinking water. Right now, there's lead in the water all around the city. That doesn't lead.
Right.
That never leads.
Right.
So the fact that we choose not to tell that also tells us what our priorities are. It tells us as a city what we should be caring about.
Right.
Like we know we should care about black people killing people. Mm-hmm. We know we should care about the Sixers home opener tonight, which I am excited about. But we also shouldn't. But we're also told we shouldn't care about lead in the water. We're also told we shouldn't care as much about political corruption. We shouldn't care as much about food insecurity.
Yeah.
We report the stories and we prioritize what matters. That's why it's so important for us to control media, and that's why citizen-driven media, I do think, is important. When we were in Ferguson, I remember being on the ground. I remember the first night I was there, we got, there was a curfew, and we went out past the curfew, and they moved the tanks in, they had the guns, and then they tear gassed us. Mm-hmm. And they shot rubber bullets at first. Somebody got hit with a real gun, a real bullet. And we were on the ground, and I remember tweeting that we had tear gas, and we were trying to make gas masks. And people were writing back, no, y'all ain't getting tear gas, it's only smoke. I know because MSNBC told me, CNN told me, Fox News told me. And it's like, okay, I don't know what they telling you, but I'm sitting here getting tear gas. I know tear gas. Anybody who's been tear gas can tell you what tear gas is, right? But it wasn't until we could videotape it and narrate our own story that we could push back to mainstream media. I don't want to have to wait for mainstream media to tell me what matters. Doesn't mean mainstream media doesn't matter. It just means that the people on the ground have to tell a story too, because the story of Ferguson would not have gotten told if not for citizen media.
That's so funny. So that I was out the night after that. And so when I was out there, the tanks were out there, and I'm walking by, and I see a guy with the camera. He's with all the folk around the tanks. He's got the military gear. I thought he was another officer. Turns out later I found out he was a journalist for the St. Louis newspaper, because I actually saw the footage. So what's ironic is I'm filming them shooting tear gas at us because people were throwing water bottles at the tanks.
Right. And like one person. It was like
water bottles against like 3 tanks and like hundreds of cops, right? Heavily armed. And so I have my video, and I'll repost it on my Facebook page, but I had someone splice it. So it's his footage next to the tank watching the shots come at us.
Right.
And then us receiving it.
Wow.
So you're talking about, I'm just hearing you that we miss that perspective.
Absolutely.
That it's always from the perspective of what law enforcement says, as though somehow it's justified, because that's the only image you see.
Exactly.
Versus people who I'm just walking down the street with a clergy collar on.
Exactly. And too often big media have been allies to law enforcement. They've been allies to the government in a certain way. Where they always get the benefit of the doubt, despite the fact that there really isn't any doubt in many of these cases.
Right.
So we need, and we needed, and we currently need more media to cover these things. I spend a lot of time in the Middle East. That's actually where I do most of my research now. And, I look at Egypt, I look at Iran, I look at even Syria, and I look at how the revolutions that have occurred, the resistance efforts, have always been aided by social media.
Right.
And you wouldn't know what was going on in Egypt without that. And there wouldn't have been international organization and international solidarity without much of the social media. When we were in Ferguson, it was children in Gaza who told us how to make gas masks. It was,
wow.
and they told us how to cover our eyes and how to flush our eyes out. Yeah. And they told us what to do when the tanks would come. Because they said, this is what happens to us every day. And so those kind of coalitions can only happen through social media, but also citizen-driven journalism. And so it's so important for us to tell those stories and tell those truths as we see them.
Yeah. Well, listen, I know you got to get out, so I want to thank you for coming all the way in. And since you're going to be in Philly, let's continue the conversation.
Yeah, I want to come back because I don't get invited places that much. You're the only person that ever invite me back anywhere. So I'm expecting an invite on the regular. If y'all don't mind,
there you go. Yeah.
I'm going to come back whenever y'all want me.
All right, and maybe you can bring your students.
I'll bring some students. I'll bring whatever you want.
Yeah,
I bring students. I bring donuts.
All right, well, I'm off the donuts, man.
You off the donuts?
Dude, I'm telling you, I lost 12, 14 pounds.
You look like you lost.
Yeah, I changed my diet, man.
Man, that's impressive.
Yeah, so don't bring donuts up in here.
All right, well, I'll eat them.
Bring some granola. Here. Bring a bowl of granola.
I ain't doing that. Never.
All right. Hey, man, appreciate you, brother. Marc Lamont Hill in studio. He's going to be teaching here at Temple University. He actually brought the Kappas by my church not long ago.
You're welcome. You're welcome, man. I wanted to spruce up the place, man. Sometimes, unfortunately, your friendly morning host pledged alpha. But we believe in a God of second chances. So,
but look, I was about to give you all props, but now let me see. I mean, they were there for a good reason. Mike Thomas is here. He's one of your frat brothers.
That's right.
And but no, you guys did a great thing, raising money for St. Jude Hospital.
Yes.
Major shout out. Man.
I was very, very happy that you let us in, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have members who have children who have some very serious health issues, so that resonated deeply with us. So thank you.
I was happy to do it, and I'm happy to come back. And again, whenever you need me, let me know.
All right.
I'm surrounded on all sides by all of these fraternities and sororities.
Yeah, Sigma Gamma Rho's holding the board down.
Indie Love on the other side.
And yet, the question that I have is, do we still need these organizations?
All right, we got to go right now.
We got.
She's the daughter.
You might want to stay another commercial break.
She's the daughter of an AKA talking that.
Oh,
so
it all comes out. We're gonna come back and just talk about that.
Right. All right, hey, folks, we'll be back on the other side of the break.